In this lecture, I'm going to focus on the Asclepion, which I had mentioned in the earlier part where I was talking about sort of Hippocrates and Galen and their world. And so the Asclepion was a very important part of the ancient Greek world and also ties into a discussion of, we talk about healing spaces, so buildings, but also kind of healing shrines, healing spaces are very common across religions. And so the Asclepion in the ancient Greek world, there's no one word in English that would equate with this. I hate to use the word spa because when we use the word spa, we think of something as very kind of trivial, but it's the idea of going away to a place, a religious place, for the purposes of healing. Shown here is the Asclepion at Pergamum, and so there were many different Asclepia throughout, as I said, the ancient Greek world in areas of what we would now call Turkey, Greece, and so the ruins are still there and people visit them. So this is an example of some of the ruins, and so what you can, I think, get a glimpse of is that typically the Asclepion was away from the urban area and in a state in a place of beautiful nature. And so you can see the mountains in the distance. So that idea that you're getting away from the kind of hubbub of life and you're in natural beauty. And so this is very much part of Greek belief that your health is impacted by your environment. And so by placing somebody in a peaceful, natural environment, that contributes to healing as well. This is the image of a theater that was attached to the Asclepion, and I just wanted to show it so that you get a sense of scale. I'm going to be talking about the role of theater in a little bit, but you can see how huge these complexes were. And so the theater was built into the hillside and attached to the temple. Now about the structure of the Asclepion. Now I realize this image is very blurry, so I'm not asking you to memorize it. I just want you to get some of the key ideas and concepts. And so I'm going to talk about some of the important aspects of the way that the complex functioned. So the person going to the Asclepion, it was very much in the kind of mode of being a pilgrim. So you're going to a sacred place. So you're in a certain psychological state of expectancy. And so if you see on the right-hand side there, the long, narrow pathway was called the Sacred Way. It was about 1 kilometer and began at the gate, and that would lead to the Asclepion. So this idea of making your way slowly into this sacred space, removing you from your mundane reality into a sacred space. So patients and visitors would proceed along this way with galleries on both sides and into the main part of the building, which was considered to be the complex, which was considered to be sacred. So I want to highlight some interesting aspects of what was contained within this complex. And so one thing was the library. And so this building was situated in the northern corner. And so we see that idea of reading and knowledge as being a really important part of medicine and of healing more generally in this placing the library within this sacred context. We also find, unsurprisingly, a temple of Asclepius, so a temple devoted to the god of healing, Asclepius. So this would be the most sacred part of the health center. It was a building 20 meters high, covered with a dome, with a marble foundation. And it's known that snakes were kept on the premises, live snakes. Yes, it's very Indiana Jones. Again, that idea of animals as holding wisdom rather than being beneath human beings is very clear here. So the snake as a symbol of an animal that can regenerate, can be reborn, and symbolizing wisdom and healing. Now, as I mentioned before, another structure within the larger complex, you can see at the top there, is the theater. And so some of these theaters could seat up to 5,000 people, so absolutely huge. And so it seems a bit strange, I think, to the kind of modern mind, contemporary mind, that you would have a theater in a place of healing. But we can see from within the ancient Greek understanding that theater was not considered to be some kind of an entertainment. It was part of spiritual understanding. And so if you're familiar with Aristotle from his very famous work, The Poetics, he states that the function of tragedy is catharsis. So developing this idea that through the arts, through theater, we experience catharsis and we can release deep feelings. And so this idea is that and this can come through comedy as well. So this idea that we can release our deep feelings and experience catharsis and healing. And I find this interesting because I think many of us do this naturally when we turn to the arts. If we're feeling a bit down, we might, turn on a rom-com. If we're feeling more in a different state of mind, we might watch something more tragic. But both offer us access to deep feelings. And so from a Greek point of view, this in itself is healing. That idea that repressed feeling can cause illness. This is a drawing, kind of imaginary rendering of what the whole thing would have looked like. We can base it on the ruins to get some idea of what the whole thing would have looked like. So you can see this is a very complex series of structures, all dedicated to healing. I want to finish now by looking at the central ritual within the Asclepion, and this would take place in what's called the Abaton, where the person would stay overnight and sleep there. And so the idea was that your healing would come in the form of dream, and ideally that Asclepius or Hygeia would come into your dream. So there were physicians, as I mentioned before, attached to these temple complexes. And so the preliminary treatment for admission into the Asclepion was catharsis or purification. It consisted of a series of cleansing baths and purgations, accompanied by a cleansing diet, which lasted for several days. So this very much partakes of the logic of religion, that idea that when we're going to undergo a transformation, we have to purify ourselves first. So there's a sort of a beginning, a middle, and an end to the process. So this is that early period of cleansing, both physically and through the diet. Then the person was admitted into the sanctuary. So once they're purified, they can move into the sacred space. Offerings were often made, usually in the form of gold, silver, or marble sculptures of the body part to be healed. Sometimes coins were tossed into the sacred spring. The Asclepian priests invoked prayers for the supplicant, and often there were testimonials etched in the temple describing how people had been cured there. And so the power of the testimonial remains to this day. So if for somebody to say this action cured me is very powerful for a sick person reading that, because it activates their hope in the ability that they too will be healed. And that's a very important part of the process. So once all of these rituals had taken place, the purification, the offering, and offering, of course, is a very common part of all religious traditions. The supplicant would enter the Abaton or dream incubation chamber for one or more nights. So if this pilgrim or patient was lucky, they would receive a personal visitation from the divine physician himself, Asclepius. Or other dreams would be less direct and more symbolic. So the physician priests at the Asclepions were master dream interpreters who would divine the treatment to be followed from the patient's account of their dream. The god Asclepius had certain totem animals also who might appear, obviously the snake being one, but also the dog and the rooster. And so the person would wake in the morning, and then typically the physician priest would interpret their dream and diagnose the illness and give a remedy. So whether it was change, probably it could be a number of things: change in diet, certain medicinal herbs, and so on. And so you can see the way in which the Asclepion encapsulates all these different aspects of healing. So the way in which the ancient Greek world understood health and healing as being multidimensional. So you're in a beautiful natural setting. There's the use of the arts. There's the use of ritual and ceremony. There's the use of dream healing. There's the physician, the divine doctor. And so all of these elements are part of health and healing from within the ancient Greek world.